able to get into this meeting today. I am Caitlin Godwin, and I'm one of the co-chairs of EWRI Seattle chapter. Just as a reminder, make sure to keep your microphone muted during the presentation. You can turn on your camera when speaking, and use the chat box for questions or if you have any technical issues or anything like that. The meeting is being recorded as of right now, and after this presentation, it will be listed on our YouTube channel to be able to watch back at a later time. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. This is Lisa Harbert, and she's going to be presenting on the environmental monitoring of the Tolt Reservoir.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Okay, you guys are seeing Tolt Phase 1, Tolt Phase 2?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to give just a slight, quick and dirty background of why this project went about. This is a Seattle City Light project, and they have a 66-inch pipe. This is, okay, for reference, Duval is here, Seattle back in here. And you come way out here to the middle of nowhere, and you are out at the Tolt Reservoir, which is where City of Seattle and the north section gets like 50% of their water. And they have these two huge pipes that drain from the Tolt Reservoir down to a holding basin, and one pipe is strictly water and one pipe is for electricity. And it was the one with the electricity that they wanted to clean the pipe because the pipe had this algae growing in it, which was, I think they said, 1/4 of an inch thick, and it was slowing down the water. So they wanted to clean the pipe. And the first thing they had to do was put in a place, it's called a pig, that it's basically these things. They're huge foam, and they have wire, in this case, they have wire bristles all around the side. So up at the top here, we installed a launching pad, and at the bottom, a receiving. And then this foam with bristles on it comes down the pipe using the water behind it, and it cleans. And they were going to run this twice to try to clean the pipe. And I was hired because the feds said not that you need a DBE firm, that you needed a separate firm as a monitoring firm to help them make sure that they did basically CECL work. And that's where I came in. So this was supposed to be a 14-week project starting in August of 2017. This actually is a picture of the receiving basin where the water goes to. Things happen, and I'll talk about them along the way, where this 14-week project ended up being 3 years. So the first thing is we had a meeting scheduled, and somebody went out there with firecrackers or something, and they blew up the gate. So our meeting was canceled because the gate had been exploded. Then we had another meeting scheduled, and somebody hit one of the power poles out there, and the road was blocked. So half an hour before the meeting, that one was canceled. So finally, the gate was fixed. There's no accidents. Oh, and then we had problems getting the permit to be able to start the project. We had the permit, the wattles are in place, we have all the essentials, and we're ready to begin. So one of the first things they did when they gave me this project is they said, here's a book, read these rules. And I kind of had to laugh because some of these rules, 25 miles an hour, okay, seatbelts, okay, no smoking on the site because you're out there. You are behind between 1 and 4 gates to be able to get up to the second place. No spitting, no human waste. And that was one of the things is the guys all kept saying to me, well, the animals pee, why can't I? And I'm like, because the animals don't take Viagra or other medications. Your car had to be in good working order. Most of the people had to use city vehicles. No alcohol. You couldn't have blankets in your car because if you had blankets, it might assume that you're staying the night. I just thought some of these rules were kind of funny. So they installed the wattle, threw all the stuff on the outside of the wattle, because the work area is here. And the digging began. And this is the pipe itself. They put stuff underneath the trucks. Sometimes we got better at that as we went along. And we often had to fix the wattle. Things happen to them all the time. You can see week 2, nothing under the truck. And everything is going over the wattles. There's actually a creek that runs on the other side of this. A few days later, some of it is fixed. Sometimes there was stuff that could go under. Sometimes it's going over. So basically, I was hired to be a rat and tell them, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. So in one case, they did put pads out, and in another case, they didn't do anything. I thought this was a really cool picture. So we finally got all the digging, and here's the big pipe. And here's another cool picture of it. This is the pipe that we're working on, but they were also tying it in. The water pipe runs here, and they were going to tie it so that if something happened, they could still get water coming, and they wanted to be able to have the water go back and forth. I think they also did some calculations, and that helped get a little bit more electricity. I don't remember why I put knowledge is power, but this, you can see all this black stuff. This is the pipe itself. And I actually had a picture somewhere and I couldn't find it, but I was actually standing inside of this and I did not have to duck down. Here we are doing more, and they're putting the vault in. And the vault is so that they can come back to this, and this is where the receiving end is. We added jute mat to try to keep the erosion down. And now, again, you're out. This whole structure system was built for a couple of reasons. One, you're out in the forest. If any sparks were to get anywhere, you've got from this point, you've got two locked gates to get in and out of, to get out of this forested area. So they were going to do welding, so they didn't want any of the sparks to catch. This is just kind of showing it was taking so long to get this that here's the wattles that were installed originally, and here's the new wattles. So the wattles started growing. And then all of a sudden the wattles started disappearing. And I don't know what happened to the wattles. Also don't know why I added this picture, but this is next to one of the gates that you have to go through, and it's over the Tolt River, and it's just really pretty, except I'm afraid of heights, so it was kind of scary. And more little sidetrack, pretty pictures. So this is looking back at the project site itself, and you can see lots of stuff was happening out there. And again, there's water over on the side here. Also, this is the end of the project, and if you go straight down this road, that's where the reservoir is. And they kept driving over the wattles. And then we get mud going down the road. And I guess I want to say one thing at this point. I'm saying there were things that went wrong and things that happened, but I want to say also that the group of people that I worked with at the city on this project, every time something did go wrong, they like jumped on it. And they were so quick to fix things and do what they had to do. And nobody ever put their hands up and said, oh my God, disaster has happened and there's nothing we can do. They said, okay, let's fix it. And I was so impressed by that. So this is where they started pouring some concrete, and they were putting in insulation around the pipes, and all this material was left on site. And again, because you're out by the water supply, none of this can stay. They had to take it out. And yes, I've had some other people say, yes, that's a big deal at a lot of projects, but I've seen stuff like this where it's not as big a deal, but out here it is. Again, this is the receiving end. So this is where that foam piece would come and stop. This is it towards the end of phase one. Again, closing up the test site. I'm a little nervous about this because, you know, you've got wild animals out there, but they ended up bringing in the lid a couple days later. This is one of the gates, which was obviously you could just walk around it. And this area, the streets are owned by Seattle, and everything around it is owned by the paper companies. So when you're out there, there's a lot of people who who have access to this area who shouldn't be out there. So they constantly have patrols out there. I got stopped by some of the Department of Ecology people asking me why I was there. I got stopped by the police asking me why I was there, and he actually like looked in my car, and my husband and I were joking. We're like, what do we have in the car? We had cat food and boxing gloves because again, you're not allowed to hunt out there. So we're like, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to put the cat food out. The deer are going to come up and we're just going to box them. Not really, but I got stopped by the Campbell police also because they have some kind of or security. They have a truck that drives around that only says security on one side. So this guy was like chasing me through this, and I had no idea who he was. He finally caught up to me at a gate, and he's like, "Oh, I guess you had a key." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "If your car had said security on both sides, I wouldn't have like tried to get away from you." But um this goes back again, and I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but very end of phase one, and there's a cigarette on the ground. And again, these rules are there because you are behind all these locked gates. You are in the forest. Um, sorry, that keeps popping up, and I don't know if I can stop it. And again, more pictures of them closing it up. You can see how muddy and rainy it was. And after this, they came in and put new gravel down. Here you can see the gravel's laid. And we took off a few months after December because it starts getting too cold and you can't get out there, and it starts snowing and these roads aren't plowed. So then we moved to the other section, which was at the launching site. And this site, we kind of took the bottom site as our practice. Um, we were kind of close to the river there, but there was enough area and enough trees in between that if something went wrong, we were going to be okay. Up at this site, we had water all around us. So we started this in April, and because the water table was so high at that time, they had to dig a well. And when they started digging the well, they hit rock. So I guess the well company couldn't get through the rock, so they hired another company to come out and dig and try to go through that rock. They couldn't get through the rock. I think they finally got through the rock, and by the time they got through the rock, summer had begun, and we couldn't do any of the work out there in the summer because you can't use mechanical equipment out in this area because again, you're in the forest and forest fires. So we had everything set up. We had all the wattles out there. This whole little truck had extra stuff in it in case there was something that had failed and there was cleanup still in here. Um, why did I show this? There's a little ditch. All ready to go. Oh, this is the drilling equipment out there drilling. And cool picture. That's the water coming over the dam, and you talk to the city and they're like, we hate when it does this because we're not getting the electricity out of it. And everything's ready to go. The rocks wouldn't cooperate. So we went home. And this is us unlocking the gate to leave. This was the first gate you have to go into. That was 2. So then we started back up months later. This was August, and we got to start back up. They came out, they set everything up again. This is the well they had dug. I have a picture coming up of looking in it. But by the time we started back up, we were no longer in the wet season. So water was never an issue. I thought these little tags were kind of cool. All the wattles had sat there for so long during the summer that they had to add a second layer to all the wattles. And again, because we're in an area that had more water around it and more things that could be contaminated, we had the wattles as a second, and we had silt fence as our first line of defense. You can see now it's not the wet season and there's barely any water coming over. And they had learned how to put stuff underneath the trucks, and they had actually purchased, instead of just pads, they purchased these containment. This was the trailer out there, and this was their generator out there, which have something underneath it to contain it also. And this was the launch site again. This site, we didn't have as much room to work, so we couldn't just dig a huge ditch. They actually had to put in walls to be able to dig down. This is the pipe before it's cut. So they did the trenching out there. I thought it was funny that closed to recreational, and yet you're behind tons of gates. Again, the generator with a box underneath it, and they covered it so it wouldn't, I guess, so it wouldn't get wet. Don't know why I have another one of those pictures. This is something that, as a civil, I had no idea, but I had a chemical engineer with me on site this day, and we walked into the trailer and found this container sitting in there, and he went ballistic. I guess these things are very high pressure and they have to be tied to the wall somehow, and this is extremely dangerous. So it was nice to have somebody with me who knew about that. And this is us taking a quick little excursion to look at the water. Again, the wattles. And they're getting ready to cut. And there they cut. And on this one, because we had limited space, they couldn't use a precast. So they ended up having to put in the concrete themselves. This is looking down that well. And yes, I'm was completely enamored by the water. And this is up. Oh, this is actually up at the top of the dam. I actually, towards the end there, took a little excursion up there. So I thought it was really, really nice up there. That's from that bridge again. And I've got one more. How are we doing on time? We're okay. If anybody has any questions or anything, let me know. You can just chime in. See if we can get this one to work now. Okay. So they got the launch in. We had the receiving in, and they decided to test the water. And for some reason, at the receiving end, one of the valves was installed opposite. So when you said it's off, it was really open and the water started coming. And I wasn't there when this happened. But I was told that there were guys inside the vault when it happened, and they all jumped up that ladder and all got out very quickly, and the water just kept running. Because remember, this is a 66-inch diameter pipe, and it's 5 miles long. So when the water starts coming, even if they don't have it all the way open, there is just a ton of water coming. At the end of this, I'll talk about one other thing on safety. So it started coming down the road, and see if I can get back to. So this is the IMAP, and here's the road where we're working. We're actually right about here. And here is the reservoir. So the water starts coming straight down here, and it's going to come into the reservoir, picking up all this dirt and putting it in there. So they put in, again, immediately. They came in and grabbed some equipment and put a berm along here so that it would come down this road. And there were some areas in here that they had calculated beforehand had some natural depressions down in here. So they diverted the water towards the natural depressions. And this is that berm, and you can see it going around the corner and down the road. And this water just kept coming and coming, and it kept coming, and it was going down that road, and it washed out the road. And there were areas where it washed it out like 30 feet deep. So again, what we had was, here's the blow off, here's the receiving, this is the oh, that's a blow off. Over farther up, 5 miles up is where our launch was. So the road washout was all in here. So all the water went here. They had already had this because when they were doing the pigging, because it had all that sediment in it, they had to have this pipe closed, and they had different blow-off valves with hoses run over to this area so they could let the sediment run into there. And they had people testing it at all the sites, making sure it was okay to let it go into the treed area. This is inside of the vault. This is them pulling the receiving area out. I think I have a picture. That is the pig inside the pipe. This is what the pipe looked like before they did this project, and this is what the pipe looked like after they did the project. That's one of the blow-offs, and those are the hoses they used to be able to bring it over where they needed it, down in that area. And just more pictures of the the road. And looking back at the project, you can see it's not that far away. And I think that's all. Excuse me, that's all I have on that. I guess the only other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly was one of the things when you're working out in this area, you actually have to have this lockout, tag out training. And I don't know if any of you guys have gone through that before, but really quickly, all it says is that if you're going to go down in the vaults or in the holes where water could come, you have to put they have the key to allow this pipe to be turned back on in a box, and you put your lock on it. And nobody's allowed to remove that lock except for you. And I went through hours of training on that. And I was like, I will never get in that hole. But I now know how to do lockout, tag out. So that is my presentation. Let me stop sharing. Barbara, you have a question?
I do. That was all really cool.
Okay, good.
All those delays dwarf my project delays, but I wondered the catastrophe of the water valve. I'm like, oh my word! I'm like, can't stand it. So anyway, what I wondered is like, exactly how was it that it was like a non-rising stem? It's a gigantic valve apparently, right? That was opened up, that had the water flow. But how did they fix it? Do you know how they fixed it?
So they had to wait for the water to drain, and then they were able to close that valve. But that again is 5 miles of 66-inch diameter pipe worth of water coming down the hill. So it took, I think by the next day, it had emptied and done all that damage. And it did see, I mean, it was incredible because I was out there the day that they had jumped out of the vault. And I was watching the water go past me, and it was, maybe a half an inch deep, maybe an inch deep, running the full width of the road going down. And, they diverted it so it wouldn't go into the reservoir. And I totally agreed with what they were doing. And I'm looking at this water, and I mean, it's a lot of water, but it was coming slowly and it was sheet flow, and it impressed me how much damage it did. It made me second guess You know, when people say you need the geotech to go out there and say you can do sheet flow. Now, you're never going to have this much water.
I hope not.
Yeah. from a rainstorm. But
Oh, I see.
but yeah, it kind of, you're like, wow. Yeah,
Well,
that road was damaged for like an entire year.
I can't imagine. I had one more question. What was their work plan for after they pigged it of the algae debris, which I'm assuming was like tons of organic material? Did they haul it off site? Was it like a hazmat thing, or what they do
They
with
did
it?
not haul it off site. They allowed it to go into those natural
Oh,
areas,
depart.
but they were testing it to make sure that what was coming out wasn't hazardous. Yeah, because again, this area, so it's going to leach into the ground, but it was in the water supply all these years anyway.
Right. Interesting. That's cool. So is there also, I guess I have more questions. Is there
Okay.
another segment of pipe further down that they're going to do the exact same thing over? It'll be another 5-year saga, or does that have a different maintenance protocol or installation, and it's not impacted?
So I don't work for the city and I don't know exactly, but I thought it was that they would do this on more pipes, but I think they might be a little shy at this point. They were supposed to do this, they were supposed to pig it twice, and they only did it once because of all the problems that happened during the first one. I kind of think you kind of learned your lesson and know, what's going to happen the second time, but I think they were camera shy the second time. But they may come back in future years. They own the second pig. And again, I've been on projects when I used to work in Chicago when I was on a project that they hired like the best company from Texas to come and help them hot tap a water main, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And on that project, everybody went, oh my God, what do we do? Oh my God, I don't know how to do this. And on this project, I can't stress enough how professional and just get it done and do it. Yes, there may have been a couple of cuss words going on, but everybody was so, okay, think for a second and then do something. We can't let the water get contaminated. We can't. I was really impressed with the people that I was working with there.
Is there another permit, like ecology, construction, stormwater general permit? Like when I heard monitoring, I thought maybe you were doing like testing, like a CECL kind of thing for like the water, the potable water part of it. I didn't quite get that you were on the like a certified
Construction.
control lead CECL side of it. But like, did you do a lot of other permitting or in conjunction with ecology as part of your role?
Not as part of mine. The city did. So the city pulled the actual permit for this site, and I know they have a regular permit for this site that they have to renew every year.
Oh, like an
But for doing this construction, they had to have two offsite or two people who weren't associated with the city to monitor them and report back to the feds. So I was hired to do the environmental monitoring, which was more just CECL stuff. And another firm was hired to look at the not architectural, for bones and stuff. I can't think of what I'm thinking.
Cultural resources.
Yeah. Yes. But the city themselves did all the actual testing of what came out of that pipe and making sure it wasn't going down into the reservoir.
Very cool. Except for the saga. I cannot imagine how much that cost either.
Yeah, it was. And okay, so my portion was 3 years, and I believe they had worked on this for several years before they got to the construction. You know, they were very good about hiring. They brought in the best company, again from Texas, to do the actual pigging. When they were told they had to do the well, they brought in, you know, one company. They had problems. They brought in another company. They got it. They were just, okay, whatever we have to do, we do it. And, but yes, so many things just kept going, things that I wouldn't have expected, you know?
I wouldn't either. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. The valve's the wrong way. I can't even understand that. I'm like, is it a butterfly valve? Is it a gate valve? What kind of valve is it? Like, how did that valve go wrong? I can't envision it, but that's not your scope of work.
Yeah, and it wasn't my scope either, but I think for some reason the way they had it in there was whoever the design work had designed it so it would go in opposite of what the manufacturer had written on the valve itself.
Okay.
So when the guys went to turn it off, it was on. And they said, yeah, that water started coming, and it started coming fast.
Then you can't adjust the valve anymore because there's so much pressure on it. Was that
yeah.
on it, or
yeah.
because they were like, okay, weird.
And they probably didn't spend too much time trying either. You know, yeah, this thing is filling up with water.
Right.
Safety
like,
first.
Can you turn the valve off? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think that's just a humbling story. I mean, like, you know, in our professional lives, we make, you know, decisions that could have been better. You know, we learn from it, this, that, and the other. But like, cowabunga, if you could pull all mine together and then nowhere. Anyway.
Well, I mean, so the one pipe that I showed, and again, I tried to find the picture because I was standing in the pipe and I didn't have to bend over at all. And okay, I'm short, but but I could stand in this pipe. And that I thought was just, I mean, those are not pipes that I normally deal with. I do, you know.
Yeah.
Even when I did municipal work, you know, 60-inch pipe, that's a big pipe, and 66-inch pipe, that's, you know, those are huge pipes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for chatting with me. I wonder if there are any other questions. Certainly, I didn't ask all of them.
James, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I hate trying to find how to turn the mute off. I think it's at the very top. I don't know, Caitlin, if you can turn his mic on.
I don't think that I can because I'm not the host today, but if Giovanna's around, then she should be able to.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure I can unmute the participant. I can mute them.
Oh.
James or anyone else, if there's any question that you want to type in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I didn't look at the chat. Oh, and Ray corrected me. The Tolt provides 1/3 and Cedar provides 2/3. I wasn't sure. The last time I gave this presentation, I took a lot longer with it. So I was trying to kind of rush through it a little bit. So
Okay, cool. Well, James just emailed me and he said he doesn't have any questions.
okay.
So I guess if there aren't any other questions, then we can go ahead and wrap up a couple minutes early. Thank you again so much, Lisa, for your presentation. It was a very fresh breath of air to get a very different perspective on the topics that we discuss. And your presentation had a lot of humor and wit to it. So thank you again for joining us today. And I don't think we have anything lined up for next month, but we're hoping to have an in-person Ballard Locks site visit. Not site, but just go to the locks and see the fish, and maybe get some drinks afterwards. Yeah. And yeah, you'll hear from us otherwise. But yeah, thank you again so much, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.